The sun hung low over the small African village, casting golden hues over the dry earth. Thatched roof huts stood in neat rows, smoke curling from cooking fires as the evening settled in. The air carried the scent of roasted maize and the distant laughter of children playing near the river. But inside James's compound, there was no laughter, only silence and tension. Clara adjusted the wrapper around her waist as she watched Emily from the corner of her eye. The 15-year-old moved with quiet defiance, her bare feet kicking up dust as she walked past without a greeting. Clara sighed. It had been a year since she married James, but Emily still looked at her like an outsider. No words of respect, no warmth, just cold, distant stares. She barely ate Clara's cooking, refused to sit beside her at the fire, and never called her mama. At first, Clara had told herself it was grief. Emily had lost her mother, and wounds took time to heal. But the more days passed, the more she saw something else in the girl's eyes, resentment. James tried to make peace, but Clara could see it clearly now. To Emily, she was not a mother, not family, just an unwanted stranger. And in Clara's eyes, Emily had become the villain in this story. The compound felt colder than the harmattan winds that blew through the village in the dry season. No matter how bright the sun shone outside, inside Clara's home, there was only silence. Heavy, unbearable silence. She tried. Oh, how she tried. She woke up early every morning, sweeping the yard before the first rooster crowed. She fetched water from the river, her feet sinking into the damp earth, hoping Emily would see her efforts. She cooked the girls' favorite meals, spicy jollof rice, groundnut soup, soft yams, but Emily only picked at her food before walking away. Every small attempt at kindness was met with a wall of indifference. "MMA, do you need help with the firewood?" The neighbor's daughter, Amara, would ask, her voice warm and respectful. Clara would force a smile, glancing at Emily, who sat by the mango tree, braiding her own hair without a care. She's a spoiled brat, Clara thought bitterly. Ungrateful. But deep down, she wasn't just angry, she was hurt. Emily wasn't just silent, she was distant, like a spirit that didn't belong to this home. She never laughed when the village women cracked jokes, never joined the other girls pounding fufu under the big baobab tree. She lived in her own world, one Clara could never reach. James saw it too, but he never took sides. "She's still a child," he would say when Clara complained. "She misses her mother." "And what about me?" Clara snapped once. "I left my father's house to build a home here, yet I feel like an intruder." James sighed, rubbing his face. "Just give her time." Time. That's what everyone kept saying. But how much longer could Clara live in a house where every word she spoke to Emily was met with silence? She turned to see the girl slipping through the compound's wooden gate, heading toward the riverbank. She never said where she was going. Never asked for permission. Clara clenched her jaw. Maybe Emily didn't just miss her mother. Maybe she wanted Clara gone. Whispers followed Clara wherever she went. "She is not even her real mother. Emily has no respect. That girl will bring her nothing but trouble." The village women never said it to her face, but Clara could hear them. She felt their pitying stares when she walked past the marketplace. Everyone knew the tension between her and Emily, it was no secret. And it was getting worse. Emily had a way of making Clara feel invisible. If she was pounding yam in the courtyard, Emily would walk past her without a word. If Clara asked her to fetch water, she would take hours to return. And when James was around, Emily acted like everything was fine, like Clara was just imagining things. One evening, Clara made groundnut soup, filling the house with a rich, warm aroma. She knew Emily loved it, she had seen the girl sneak extra servings before. But when she called her to eat, Emily simply glanced at the steaming bowl and walked away. Clara's hands clenched. She tried to brush it off, but frustration boiled inside her. That night, she poured out her heart to Mama Obi, the village elder known for her wisdom. "She doesn't respect me," Clara fumed, stirring the hot embers of the cooking fire. She ignores me, refuses to eat my food, and acts like I don't exist. Mama Obi listened, nodding slowly. And what does James say? He tells me to give her time, Clara scoffed. But how much longer? That girl does not want me here. Mama Obi sighed, tapping her walking stick on the ground. Grief changes people, my daughter. Perhaps what you see as cruelty is just pain she doesn't know how to carry. Clara swallowed hard, shaking her head. No. This wasn't just grief. Emily wanted to make her life miserable. And Clara was starting to believe she was succeeding. Clara sat on the woven mat outside, her hands busy weaving a new basket for the market. The sun was setting, and the village was alive with the hum of evening activities. She glanced up now and then, hoping to catch a glimpse of Emily, but the girl was nowhere to be seen. It had been a long, tiring day, and Clara's patience was running thin. She was just about to call for dinner when she heard voices from the shadows near the old mango tree. It was Emily. She was speaking softly, not realizing that Clara had quietly approached from behind. Clara froze. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but what she heard next made her heart twist. I just want to go back to before she came, Emily's voice trembled. I want Mama. I want things the way they were. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard Emily sound so vulnerable, so fragile. Her heart ached as Emily continued, her words catching in the evening breeze. I know Papa loves her, but she's not my mother. I don't want to be here, pretending everything is fine. It hurts too much. Clara stood frozen, torn between the urge to comfort Emily and the fear that she was intruding on something too personal. Emily continued, unaware of Clara's presence. It's not her fault, but I just don't know how to let her in. I don't know how to trust her. I don't want to get hurt again. The weight of the words sank into Clara's chest like a stone. She had assumed Emily's coldness was born of rebellion, that she was simply rejecting her stepmother. But now, Clara realized it was something deeper, something much more painful. Emily wasn't angry at Clara. She was grieving. Grieving for the mother she had lost and the new reality she couldn't accept. Clara closed her eyes, guilt washing over her. She had judged Emily too harshly. She had been angry at the girl for pushing her away without understanding why. Slowly, Clara sat down on the ground, feeling the weight of everything that had been unsaid between them. The silence between them was not one of cruelty, but of fear that Emily had been carrying alone. The next few days passed with an uneasy calm. Emily seemed to avoid Clara even more than usual, slipping away from the compound at every opportunity. But Clara couldn't stop thinking about what she had overheard, about the grief and fear that Emily had been hiding. One afternoon, as Clara cleaned the small storage room beside the kitchen, she stumbled upon something hidden under a pile of old cloths. At first, she thought it was just an old bag, but when she reached for it, her fingers brushed against something soft, leather, aged and worn. A diary. Clara hesitated. It was wrong, she knew that. Emily's private thoughts were hers alone, and Clara had no right to invade them. But her curiosity got the better of her. Gently, she opened the first page. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. Mama died today. I can't believe it. I hate how everything has changed. Papa says we have to move on, but I don't want to. I want Mama back. Clara's heart twisted. She had heard Emily's pain in the whispers, but reading it in black and white hit her like a wave. The next few pages were filled with more of Emily's raw emotions. I hate that Clara is here. She isn't my mother. She doesn't understand. I feel like I'm losing everything. The house doesn't feel like home anymore. I don't belong anywhere. Clara's eyes blurred with tears as she read on. Emily had been carrying this weight for so long, burying her pain behind a wall of anger and silence. All this time, Clara had seen the resistance and assumed it was just a rebellious attitude. But now, it was clear. It was a cry for help. The final entry hit Clara the hardest. I don't want Clara to leave. But I can't let her get close. What if she leaves me too? What if she forgets me like everyone else has? Clara's hands trembled as she closed the diary. She had misjudged Emily. She had seen the girl's anger and shut her out instead of seeing the fear beneath it. The walls between them were not built on cruelty, but on an unspoken fear of being abandoned. Emily was terrified of loving someone who could leave her just like her mother had. Clara sat down, letting the diary rest in her lap. She felt a deep ache in her chest, a mixture of sorrow and understanding. She wasn't just Emily's stepmother. She was the woman who had to help heal her broken heart. Clara sat quietly, the weight of Emily's words heavy in her chest. The diary had been an unwelcome revelation, but it had opened her eyes to the pain the girl had been hiding. Emily wasn't a villain. She was a child lost in grief, unsure of how to deal with the changes in her life. Clara's own heart was filled with a newfound resolve. She couldn't change the past, but she could change how she treated Emily from now on. She would not abandon her. The next morning, Clara decided to start small. She made Emily's favorite dish, spicy jollof rice with fried plantains, and set it on the table, but this time, she didn't call her right away. She waited. The hours passed, and when Emily finally came in from the yard, Clara didn't say a word. She simply nodded toward the food. Emily hesitated. Her eyes flickered between Clara and the food, but after a long pause, she sat down and began to eat. Clara smiled softly, but she didn't push. She knew it would take time. The next few days were filled with small acts of kindness, leaving fresh fruit by Emily's door, giving her space when she needed it, and always respecting the girl's need for silence. Clara no longer saw the coldness in Emily's eyes as rejection. Instead, she saw the weight of unspoken fears. One evening, Clara was sitting by the fire, stirring a pot of soup. Emily came out of the hut, barefoot, her hair tangled from a long day outside. She sat beside Clara, her body language stiff at first. Clara turned to her, offering a gentle smile. "I made your favorite, groundnut soup with goat meat." Emily looked up slowly, her gaze softening. For the first time, there was no coldness, no walls between them. She nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, barely above a murmur. Clara's heart swelled. It was a small thing, just 2 words, but it was the beginning of something new. It had been a week since that quiet dinner by the fire. Slowly, things between Clara and Emily began to shift. The walls were still there, but they weren't as high as they had once been. There was a subtle change in the air, like a gentle thawing after a long, cold winter. Clara would wake up to find Emily helping her with the morning chores, fetching water from the well without being asked or sweeping the yard. She didn't say much, but the silence between them had changed. It was no longer uncomfortable, it was simply there, a peaceful space where they could exist together without force. One afternoon, Clara was sitting outside under the shade of the baobab tree, weaving another basket. Emily came up to her, holding a small bundle of herbs. She didn't sit, but the fact that she had approached at all was a small victory. "Mama," Emily said, her voice hesitant but softer than it had ever been. Clara looked up, surprised. She hadn't heard the word mama from Emily's lips since her mother had passed. It caught her off guard, but it felt like a breath of fresh air. "Yes, my child?" Clara asked, her heart racing a little. Emily fidgeted with the herbs in her hands, clearly unsure. I made this for you. For the soup. It's the same one Mama used to make." Clara's throat tightened. She nodded, reaching out to accept the herbs. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice filled with emotion. Emily seemed to relax a little, though her face was still guarded. "I thought, maybe it would taste better." Clara smiled, holding the herbs close. "I'm sure it will. You've been so kind, Emily. I'm proud of you." For a long moment, they simply sat together. The words were few, but they spoke volumes. Emily wasn't ready to embrace Clara completely, but she was slowly opening up. Slowly, but surely, Clara was learning how to let Emily take the lead. Later that evening, after the sun had set and the village was quiet, Emily came to Clara's side as they sat by the fire. She didn't speak at first, just watched the flames dance in the night air. "I've been thinking," Emily said softly, her voice almost lost in the crackling of the fire. Maybe you're not so bad." Clara's heart skipped a beat. It was the first real sign of progress, and it was more than she had dared hope for. "Thank you, Emily," Clara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I know it's not easy, but I'm here. I'll always be here for you." Emily didn't respond right away, but Clara saw her eyes soften just a little. It was a small breakthrough, but it was a breakthrough all the same. As the weeks passed, Clara found herself growing more and more attached to Emily. The girls' walls were still there, but they weren't as high or as thick as they had once been. They shared quiet moments, and though Emily never said much, the glances they exchanged spoke volumes. There was understanding now, where once there had been only distance. One day, as Clara and Emily sat together on the porch, the sound of children's laughter echoing from the village square, Emily turned to her stepmother, her face serious. "I'm sorry, MMA," Emily said quietly. Clara's heart skipped a beat. "Sorry? For what, my child?" Emily shifted uneasily, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "For being so difficult. For pushing you away." She swallowed, her voice trembling just a little. "I know you've tried. I know you care." Clara's chest tightened. She had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, she didn't know how to respond. Instead of answering right away, Clara reached out and took Emily's hand. For a moment, there was no need for words. Emily didn't pull away, she simply allowed Clara's touch, a small act of comfort, to settle between them. "You don't have to apologize," Clara whispered. "I understand now. You were hurting, and I didn't see it. I thought you didn't want me here, but I see that you were just afraid." Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought if I didn't let you close, you wouldn't leave me too. I thought if I hated you enough, I wouldn't feel so empty inside." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. She squeezed Emily's hand tighter. "I'm not going anywhere, my dear," Clara said firmly. "I may not have been there when you lost your mother, but I'm here now. And I'll stay. I promise." For a long moment, they sat there together, the warmth of the afternoon sun surrounding them. The village seemed distant, and for the first time in a long while, Clara felt that maybe, just maybe, they could be a family. The pain wasn't gone, not yet. The wounds ran too deep, and trust couldn't be built overnight. But as Clara looked at Emily's face, she saw something she hadn't seen before: hope. It was the first time Emily had truly let Clara in, and it was a step toward healing, for both of them. The days that followed were quieter, more peaceful. Clara and Emily found a rhythm, a new way of being together. The bond they were slowly building was fragile, but it was real. Slowly, their laughter began to echo in the compound once again, not forced or strained, but genuine. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle above the village, Emily came to Clara with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Here," Emily said, offering it with a shy smile. Clara took it carefully, unwrapping the cloth to find a necklace made of beads and small pieces of wood. It was simple, but it was beautiful. "I made it for you," Emily said, her voice soft, but the pride in her eyes was undeniable. "I thought you might like it." Clara's heart swelled. She had never received a gift from Emily, not like this. Not with love and care behind it. "Oh, Emily," Clara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This means so much to me." Emily didn't say anything, but she looked at Clara with something new in her eyes. It was not the bitterness or the sadness that had once clouded her gaze, but something softer. Something hopeful. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice cracking. She put the necklace around her neck and touched the beads gently, feeling the weight of everything that had passed between them. Over the next few months, the house grew warmer, not just because of the fire at night, but because of the love that slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to fill the spaces between Clara and Emily. The days of silence and tension faded into memory, and though they still had their differences, there was an unspoken understanding now. One afternoon, as Clara and Emily sat on the porch, watching the village women gather around the communal fire, Emily turned to Clara once again. "Mama," she said, the word rolling off her tongue with ease. Clara's breath caught in her chest. She looked at Emily, who was smiling shyly. "Yes, my child." "I'm glad you stayed," Emily said, her voice steady, but with a warmth that Clara had never heard before. Clara smiled, her heart full. "I'm glad too, Emily. I'm glad too." It was a new beginning, one that was filled with hope and the promise of healing. For Clara, Emily, and James, the journey ahead wouldn't be without its struggles, but they had come so far. They had learned to love and to forgive, to be there for each other even when it was hard. And for the first time in a long time,